Hi, everyone, and welcome to Come Undone. I'm your host, Georgia Rose, a clinical sexologist and a sex coach who helps people with their sex lives. But in this podcast, I'm the one in the hot seat. Over 8 weeks, I'll be going on my own sexual healing crash course to help me get my mojo back after cancer and grief left me feeling like a stranger in my own skin. Each week, I'll have my own sex coaching session with a leading expert, and then I'll take on an assignment. And you'll be right there with me. If you've ever felt disconnected from your body, your desire, or your sexual spark, you're not alone. So welcome. This is my sensual comeback tour, and I'm handing you a backstage pass. This week, I'm sitting down with my old mentor and sex coach, AB White. We talk about the nervous system and how to feel at home in your body after stress or trauma. You might be wondering, what on earth has this got to do with sex? Well, when we're distracted or in our heads or in survival mode, it's really hard for our body to get turned on. So me and Amy unpack how working with the body and regulating the nervous system can help reignite our sexual spark. This episode isn't just for people who've experienced trauma. It's for anyone feeling stressed or overwhelmed by daily life, which, let's be honest, in 2025 is surely most of us. If you want practical tips on how to wake up your erotic self, this one's for you. I'll see you in there. Amy, welcome.
Thank you, Georgia, for having me.
Thank you so much for being here today. Yeah, there's no one else I'd rather be talking about this than you. I feel that you are like industry expert and top of your game.
Thank you, Georgia. I'm touched.
No, I really feel that. Why don't you tell everyone who you are, about your work, etc.?
Absolutely. So I'm Amy, and I'm a holistic sexuality coach for women. So my work involves supporting women in coming back into relationship to sex and pleasure in a way that feels authentic to them outside of any conditioning, any expectations, societal conditioning. So really like an unraveling and coming home to the body, right? And with that, like working with the nervous system and coming into a sense of safety in the body so that they can experience like pleasure, but aliveness as well, creative energy and orgasms.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
What a job.
Someone's got to do it.
Doing God's work or goddess's work.
Goddess's work. Yeah. I know it's hard, but someone has to step up.
So I know Amy through the industry and also because you were my mentor.
Yes.
For a couple of months just before I got diagnosed.
I know.
So you were sort of there.
That was just, wow, it was just wild. And I remember you saying, like, I'm experiencing stress and, like, I feel anxiety in my chest. And I'll be honest, like, similarly maybe to you, I was like, well, we all do. And, thank fucking God you went to the hospital. And I was just like, don't know, just feel a bit teary just even saying it and just, like, stunned. Obviously we paused the professional thing and just sort of, like, let her kind of go on her journey. And I was watching you and, like, yeah, it's just, and then watch you get married, watch your dad passed, and watch you go into like remission. And I'm just like, oh my God, goddess. Like, like what a lot to go through. What a lot to go through. And then when you reached out and I was like, what an amazing idea that you're doing, and like what a journey. Like, Georgia, you're like an amazing woman to have like gone through all of this and be here, and like now we're in this room.
Well, I just feel that it couldn't have. I don't really believe in like things happen for a reason, but I feel like this experience happened. What am I going to do with it? Can I do something positive with it? I've definitely had my own sexual issues and lots of things have come up since cancer and grief. It's a real double whammy. And if I know everything, not everything, but if I know all the theory and I know all the tools and I know stuff and I'm struggling, then what the hell are other people doing? So I just really felt like this was a really kind of important thing to sort of document, even though I might come to regret it, but hopefully not. Everyone leave nice reviews. But yeah, I just kind of felt like, what can I do with this experience that could be positive for other people?
Yeah.
I wonder if you could kind of explain What's the nervous system and how does it relate to sex?
Yeah, of course. The nervous system is essentially the network of nerves that cover our entire body that are responding to our environment. And I think, the main thing that we talk about when we speak about the nervous system is our it being like our internal like warning system.
Yeah, like an alarm.
Yeah, our alarm system. So it's sensing for danger. And when it perceives danger to be happening, it floods our body with the chemicals to either fight that danger or run away from it. If you think about evolutionary wise, in caveman days, our nervous system was the thing that, like, we're eating our meal of raw meat and the lion pops round the corner and pops into the cave, and you've got your family there, and you're like, I've either got to fuck this lion up or we've got to run or I've got to play dead, which is freeze, and hope that it goes away. Oh, freeze, you see that. They were like, don't move. And so those are the responses in the threat to danger. These days, the danger is not always something that we can fight or run away from. Like, you get a bill, you get a debt letter. What are you going to do? Bash, 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 bash. Like, fight the paper. That would actually be a really good response just to get out of your system in the moment.
Okay, good to know.
But it doesn't resolve the threat. You can't run. Well,
Yeah.
people do. They just like bury their head in the sand. But burying your head in sand is more of a freeze.
Yeah.
I'm just going to
Like a void.
just boom, just shut down. Pretend it's not happening. It's too overwhelming. When anything in our environment has created a sense of danger that we can't resolve in the moment, it's like spiked our nervous system. What happens is we're going to freeze, we're going to shut down. Our nervous system is responsible for feeling. One of the main nerves is the vagus nerve, and it runs from the base of the skull, which is in the neck, and it runs all the way into the cervix. When we get kicked into fight, flight, or freeze, it shuts down. And so the messages from the brain into the genitals short circuit. And so our sense of arousal, which is a process between the brain and the genitals, gets cut off. So our ability to be turned on or maintain turn on, or to like feel the bigness of our turn on and our orgasm, becomes disrupted.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's why so many people get their sex lives are impacted by stress. It's such a common thing. And when you're stressed, the last thing you want to do is like soften and relax and open.
You just don't have really any access to
you
pleasure.
Don't. Yeah, your body is protecting you. You know, it's not doing anything wrong. It's doing exactly what it should do. If you think about it evolutionary wise, if a lion is coming up to you, the last thing you're going to do is like, I'm just going to quickly fuck my wife.
Yeah.
Because this might be the end. You've got to preserve resources.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
and stay alert or freeze. Your body shuts down access to that because you are in danger.
Yeah. So it's like a protective mechanism that we shouldn't be cross about.
No.
We just need to understand
Yeah.
and get to know and learn how to work with it. Basically, that's what I learned with you when I was doing all my work with you years ago.
I love that you remember that. That makes
100%.
me so happy. Yeah.
I still have like your notes, and when I work with clients, I still like refer to it. I think it is such an important part of it. It really, really is.
Yeah. I feel like it's the foundation because if your nervous system has short-circuited for whatever reason, you're either overwhelmed, fight, flight.
And I think the majority of people, it just like completely like shuts down your kind of access.
Particularly women I work with, they feel shut down. And that's because, not just because life's stressful, but because of all the messages we receive around sex, around being a woman. It's like, the body's like, I don't think I'm safe here. I don't think it's safe to be a sexual woman because maybe I'm a slut, or I'm going to be shamed, or I'm frigid if I don't want to do that. There's so many things.
So sex is the lion.
Yes. Yeah. And it's wild because it is actually the most natural thing that our body experiences. Like, it's so natural and beautiful and primal and nurturing, but it's been so distorted. I'm just going to say it. If you want to improve your relationship to sex, particularly if your challenges are disconnected, you consider yourself to be low libido. I do quotation marks because I don't believe in that. I would question what you're measuring up to.
Yeah, 100%.
And I also, if anyone thinks they are not interested in sex, they have a low libido, first thing I ask is like, what is the sex that you don't want? Because there's very variable. And it's probably that it's just shit sex.
And do you know how your sexual desire works?
Yeah. Do you know how your sexual desire works?
You need to like really interrogate the sex that you're having.
Yeah.
And is that what
like,
turns
pull
you
it
on?
apart. Like what actually happens? We kiss, clothes come off, goes in. I'm like,
No.
Of course you're not going to like that. It's
I always refer to
dry.
that as like a set menu. And if you're following that all the time, then obviously that's not going to be satisfactory.
And it's often quite functional. And, you know, women's bodies take more time and like more rhythm and energy and feeling and connection to like unfurl and open. Yeah, we're often being penetrated way before we're ready.
Yeah. And I think that can obviously cause issues on the nervous system.
Because whenever we override where the body is at, the body says, I'm not safe because you're not listening to me. So I'm going to just contract and freeze a bit more to look after myself. I'm going to create a little bit more layer of armor. And when I say this, what I want you to do, those who are listening, is to start feeling that from now, because you will feel a contraction, like even just the slightest thing, like shoving a tampon in, you might feel like this wince in your body. That's your body saying, I don't want this. And it's not to say you can't put a tampon in, but what you can do is just pause, slowly, sort of mindfully, almost talk to your body and like let it sort of touch the entrance of the vagina. Take some breaths and soften and ease it in. So your body's just not having like these just multiple small pinches where it's like, and don't get me wrong, just putting a tampon in is not going to cause this like mass freeze where you can't orgasm again. But I'm just giving a smaller example of how the body pinches and winces when we're putting stuff inside when it doesn't want it there.
Yeah. So that's a great introduction to intro people to the nervous system. Well, we had loads and loads of different kind of classes and lessons together. And I think for me, who, you know, I'm kind of more interested in like theory and scientific things and like reading books and stuff. So it was like a real learning for me to be like, right, like there's like loads of intuition and wisdom in the body. And it was really, honestly, it was the best time for me to start learning that. I started connecting with my body a lot more. I started doing a lot more body-based practices and like strengthening the mind-body connection. And then I think that really helped me in getting myself diagnosed because I knew something was really off.
Yeah, I remember
and something was
that.
different. But I wanted you to come on today to discuss how I probably haven't worked on the nervous system loads in my recovery, how I can work with it more. Could it be something that's blocking me still, like from feeling that kind of sexual aliveness and sexual spark?
Yeah. So from what you've told me, and just even if you hadn't told me, just knowing what you've been through, your nervous system would be frazzled out, you know, because you've been fighting fires. You've been in survival mode. You've been literally, your body's been fighting disease, you know, fighting a, you know, potentially terminal illness.
Yeah.
And then grief, you know, like it's so overwhelming, you know, and the two things are slightly different. Well, different but intertwined, you know, there's different layers. So there's one where you're physically fighting off disease in the body.
I was aware that I was in survival mode.
Yeah.
Definitely. And just sort of this kind of warrior mode. And I feel like I was connected to my body, but through the lens of like, we've got to get through this. We're surviving this.
Yeah.
We're getting out through the other end. So I was like meditating every day and doing acupuncture and cold showers and diety things. You know, I was really kind of attuned to my body in that way, but through this very specific medical lens.
Yeah.
But then underneath all of that, I was really kind of frustrated and upset and let down and just disappointed with my body. And I felt very out of control, which is probably why one of the reasons I was really layering on all the holistic care, which I do believe really, really helped me. But I think, you know, I want to probably acknowledge there was that sort of out of control feeling happening underneath.
Yeah.
And I was just like pissed off that my body had grown something that I wasn't aware of. I was growing something that was killing me. I was in medical menopause. I was fucked off by that. It was horrible. I hated the side effects. Like you're scared. You're just frightened all the time. So that was sort of just feeling very disconnected from my body and kind of like realizing that my body doesn't feel like mine anymore. I feel like a specimen when I go to the hospitals and they're prodding me and they're poking me. And I remember going for this kind of, they're just like checking my heart and they were just like pushing down this sort of, I don't know what it was. I can't really remember, but it was like a kind of like metal thing into my heart. I just remember sobbing, like properly sobbing. And I was like, I just feel like I'm this thing that's being handled. Like, and I've deliberately just disconnected from my body and disassociated because why do I want to be totally connected to my body is having chemo put through it? Like, why do I want to be really connected to my body when my hair's falling out? Like, it's a protective mechanism.
Yeah.
And it felt right to disconnect.
Yeah.
So I would say that was the cancer experience. So I wonder if you can kind of talk to that from a somatic nervous system perspective.
Yeah. And just for anyone listening, somatic is that relationship between mind and body that we're speaking about, just for terminology purposes. But yeah, like what I'm hearing is your practices, your cold showers, your meditations kept your head above water. They didn't get you out of the water, but they kept your head above water in a time when you were just in survival and you needed to tread water, But what was happening underneath was all this unprocessed emotion that you couldn't feel because it wasn't safe for you to feel it. You couldn't go in there. You couldn't just fall into the fear or into the grief because you had to fight, and that's normal. That's what you were meant to do. You're meant to put the armor on and get on the battlefield and get through it, But then what you're left with is this body that's just on like high alert for danger, and that has this well of unprocessed emotion. Because if you think of emotion like energy, right? Energy that wants to move, and you really feel that and our body tells us how it wants to move it. Like when we want to cry, it literally sort of like bubbles up into our eyes and spills out. But we tend to kind of like, no, I shouldn't cry. But like we work to push it down. Often if we've had so much overwhelming emotion, so much going on, it can, just get shoved down and be unprocessed, but also can overwhelm the nervous system and kick us into freeze as well, and that's part of the survival. The layers, it's like body being pumped with chemicals and having an internal war with a disease, right? Emotions coming up that you don't feel safe to process or to feel or can be with right now, and body being prodded. Right? So everything in you is saying, no, we're going to stay in the head and we're going to forget this for now because we need to get through this, So disconnecting is part of your protection mechanism. This is absolutely the right thing that you had to do to get through what you went through. But then what you're left with is like, how do I enter back in when it's been through so much? And I might have to feel some of the stuff that it went through. And that feels like a lot. And that feels like a kind of like a trunk that I might have to open, you know, and that can feel scary. And if we understand emotions again as energy and like orgasm as energy and pleasure as energy, they're all part of the same like circuit and flow. And so if like we're pushing down the flow, we don't want to feel the flow, they all kind of like mute and shut down.
That's so interesting because I think that is the way that I would describe my sense of sexual self right now. It was definitely kind of offline, I would say.
Yeah.
After grief, actually, I think it was like, and it's really hard to kind of to tell, what was grief, what was cancer, because they happened so close to one another. And I feel that the kind of the loss of my dad just sent me into this like total shutdown. And I know I've told you before, like there were certain things that I really, really used to love to do, which was like take a bath or like to meditate and like take that time for myself. It's not really a sexual practice.
It's sensual, isn't it?
It is sensual. Just butting in here because why am I talking about baths? For me, baths have always been a sensual self-pleasure practice. And no, I don't mean masturbating. Indulgent baths with all the trimmings from flower petals to candles, that was the perfect place for me to engage with all my senses and to take time just for myself. I often encourage my clients to do exactly this Because if we can give ourselves permission to enjoy small acts of pleasure in our day-to-day, to feel deserving of pleasure, then we will feel more comfortable advocating for our own pleasure inside the bedroom. But after this whole traumatic experience that I've had, I just can't do these baths anymore. And I could not have a bath. Like, I just could not get it. I'd like run it, I'd make it really nice, like look beautiful. I was like, no, must not. Just like leave, like completely avoid it.
Yeah.
And it just feels so difficult. And I just could not meditate. I just could not sit there on my own and just like close my eyes and be with myself. I was like, absolutely not. Like, no way. And like things that felt more comfortable were like doing, like being busy. And I think I felt so frozen.
Yeah.
And sort of kind of overwhelmed that I just like couldn't even begin to work with it. I was just like, no, I know, I'll just wait, and the frozenness will thaw.
Yeah.
In its time. And
Yeah.
like I'll just and I gave myself loads of intentional time and break and put pressure on myself, and that was right. But I haven't worked with the nervous system. And I think it's a thing. I know it.
Yeah.
And that's why I really wanted to talk to you, because I was like, I think this is a block and this is what's keeping me from being, it was keeping me muted.
Yeah. And because, you make a really good point. Like, time can kind of more bring you down from a heightened threat state, but it doesn't necessarily thaw out an embedded freeze response, because the freeze response is almost like calcifying and protecting you from the things that you weren't able to feel back then.
Okay. So it's like, it's freezing you from feeling.
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah. It's stopping you from feeling so you can survive. Right. And, you mentioned like the bath and the meditation. They're seemingly simple things, but they're not to a body that is terrified of having to unpack all this unprocessed emotion, which it knew that it couldn't feel at the time, let alone now it's all built up and, now you want to sit with it for an hour, Being sat with yourself for an hour when you've got so much, stuff that you've been through is too much. And, what we need to do when we're working with the nervous system is listen to the body's capacity and work with like doable steps and small doable steps to unthaw and melt, and then stop, recalibrate, and then unthaw, melt, stop, recalibrate. So, for example, your body...
in that situation, like say if I'm like, right, pimped up the bath, can't handle, close the door, no.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was like, right, yeah, there's something going on. I know there's something going on. Time. I'll just give it time. What could I have done?
Yeah. Well, what you did was amazing, because what you're hearing is your body's no. Your body's saying no. So what you could do is go and sit. And you can either sort of like check in with your body, stop and take a few breaths and be like, well, what do I need? What would I need here? Right? You can even journal it out if it feels easier to do that. And, I know that these answers don't necessarily come up so quickly, but sometimes it's like, I just want to lay like a starfish and stare at the ceiling for a minute. Sometimes we really need to just listen to what the body wants and be like, if I could get my mind out of the way of like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, that could be the right thing. Just be like, if I was being really, really true to myself, what do I need? What does my body need right now? And it might be like, sometimes when we can't sit with ourselves, it's like, I need to run.
Yeah.
I need to go and discharge this energy. I need to scream into a pillow. I need to bash, or, sometimes it's like you just put your hand on your chest and you're like, I need to cry.
Yeah.
There's actually tears to be felt. Whenever you feel a pocket of emotion, you are thawing out.
Okay. So last week I spoke to Katie and she set me an assignment, which was to go to a rage room.
Yeah.
And to express anger and rage, because I don't really feel that much anger. And then obviously it's an important thing for grief. So she told me to go and exercise that out at the rage room. And it was really interesting because within about 2 minutes, I was sobbing, like guttural sobs.
Yeah.
I did not expect like a full blown like breakdown in the rage room. Like, what do you think was going on?
You cracked through some grief.
Yeah.
Cracked through some freeze, should I
Freeze,
say.
yeah.
Yeah. Like, sometimes it's layered. It's almost, freeze can almost be like concrete. As I said, it's like a block of ice. Like, think of freeze as like ice. Ice isn't an easily breakdownable material. I don't know if that's the right word, but do you know what I mean? It's not, fucking ice would sink a ship. It's
Yeah.
tight. It's like solid.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a good like bashing to get it out. And anger is a really, really healthy emotion as long as you don't express it in ways that harm yourself and others. Like rage rooms are great for it. Like literally having a rage out is so healing. It gets energy moving through your body, particularly when we're speaking about the nervous system and about this like freeze response. It's like everything's sort of like shut down. It's like wake it up, like get it moving, get it running through the system. Getting out whatever you're feeling is going to help you access more pleasure, more aliveness. It's going to help your nervous system come back online again. And when I say online, when we feel safe and regulated on our nervous system, that's when we can connect to others, we feel sociable, we can meditate, we can relax, we can play, we can have orgasms, we can feel pleasure, we can feel deeply rested. All those lovely things exist in the safe space in our nervous system.
So 2 questions, because I guess it can feel really unconscious. Like, I didn't know that I had all that kind of like feelings underneath the surface. Like, I felt fine on the way to the rage room. Like, I felt fine.
Yeah.
It was only when I got given the crowbar where I felt anxious and then 2 minutes later crying. And I was so unaware that that was all beneath the surface. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes I am like, oh, I'm fine. I'm pretty good. Like, look
The
at me.
I'm fine epidemic.
Yeah, like, I'm fine. Like,
Yeah.
I'm getting up and being pretty fine today. And sometimes I have to catch myself being like, I think maybe I'm not fine. And I think I'm just going to like give myself permission to watch like a really sad film.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I have to give myself tools to access those like very raw emotions.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm someone who's actually quite in touch with themselves.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that is still something that I have to do. I kind of have to know the things that like do give me a bit of a cathartic,
Yeah.
liberating experience, which is hacking away at the freeze.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's not necessarily even like being self-aware or not. If your emotions want to hide and don't want to be seen, then you can't find them. They're going to be in the subconscious. If they don't feel safe to come out. Like one thing that I really love is like body check-ins, and you might already do them, but just like I always place a hand on the heart. I just think there's something so tender about putting your hand on your heart, closing your eyes, and like softening your belly, softening your shoulders, connecting to your breath, and maybe just noticing what you feel in your heart. And just tracking for sensation like fizziness, tingling, numbness, anything, any way that your body's talking to you. And just breathing with it. And what, if anything, Georgia, did you notice?
Like not much, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much, I would say.
Would you mind staying there for a moment longer?
Maybe like sadness,
Where do you feel that?
heart,
Yeah.
just like, I think it's quite easy to glaze over this like quite big experience I've had. I think my mind is so like, move on, move on, move on, like, come on, move on. Whereas I think, yeah, within it, it still feels sad and it still feels
Yeah.
tender and it still feels like, God, this was a mammoth experience.
Yeah.
And no wonder aspects of myself have not come back online, or like parts of myself don't feel as alive.
Yeah.
Like my sexuality, which is obviously this whole sexual healing that I'm going on.
Yeah. And what I would say that happened there is that you felt something, but just like a glimmer. Because you mentioned it, you were like, I don't feel anything. And then it went to sadness. And I want to be mindful that you probably didn't feel safe in the basis of like you're being filmed, right? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's a real, we talk about safety and being safe to feel. We don't want to be witnessed. We don't want to be filmed, right? So there would be that part of you that's like, I can't quite go there. But there was something coming up, and then, then your head was making sense of it, which is doing, it's keeping you at a place where you can understand it. I guess if we was just on our own, I would direct you back to the heart and out of the words and back to the sensation. And what probably would have started to happen is you probably would have experienced some emotion moving. Yeah, when we kept you there.
It's really interesting. When you kind of
Yeah.
are able to shut up the brain.
Yeah. And it's guided practices really help, because it's hard, when we're just on our own, we're trying to guide ourselves into the body, but we operate from our heads. We're kind of like battling between the two. And so it can be really helpful to have someone to guide you. So check-ins on our own can't always be the most effective. Do you know what I mean?
So it's good to do it with someone else.
Yeah. What I love to say is like, give your body the mic, give it the microphone, because our head has the microphone all the time. It's like, I should run a bath, I should meditate, da 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 da. Like, shut the head off and say, what does the body want? The body's no to a bath and a meditation. What's the body yes to? What feels good? What's like, yeah, I want to do that. Like, keep giving your body more of that, because the more we deny the body or override it, like I said, the more it numbs out. It kind of just reaffirms. It just like puts on another layer of arms. Like, come on, we've got to go to war. We've got to go do things we don't want to do. Let's go,
Okay, so the more you kind of push it, you put the armor on.
Yeah.
The more you
listen to it.
Yeah.
But like, do the things it wants to do. Does it want to rest? Does it want more food? Does it actually want to move? Like, get some movement in it.
So like listen to the body's needs. Because it feels like there's two things going on here. There's almost like the emotional side of the body, and like the kind of emotions that are sitting within.
Yep.
And expressing that. And that's a way of like helping the unfreeze.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's also another part of it, which is sort of listening to what the body doesn't want to do and what it does want to do. Is that right?
Which creates the safety that allows it to start processing.
Okay.
And allows it to start coming online. So creating the safety, which is like listening to the body and giving it its needs, like resourcing the body, resourcing yourself. Sometimes it's like, do you even want to be in the pub that you're in, or that, when you're really, really working with coming out of deep trauma, you have to listen to every cue. You have to really double down on like all choices that you make. And it's not actually that, I want to say not enjoyable, but as in like, it's not just like breathe into your body and, meditate. It's like really looking at everything in your life and like, is it supporting your system to feel calm and safe, And that's not to get too precious about like, oh God, I feel some discomfort, I must be unsafe. No, like we want to increase our capacity to be with discomfort, but we also just want to create an environment in our body where it starts to be like, oh, I can thaw out a bit. I can feel safe to unfreeze.
Okay, linking this back to sex, we've already established that when the body's in survival mode, the erotic switch, it flips off. If we continually push through stress and discomfort, we risk getting stuck in a fight, flight, or freeze state. That's when our nervous system becomes dysregulated, and sexually speaking, it can just flatline our arousal and our pleasure. So yes, the more we ignore the body, the more disconnected and numb we become. But the reverse is also true. The more we listen and respond to what the body's asking for and help it feel safe, the more we can start to feel sensation and our eroticism again. And that's one of the many, many reasons we can benefit from having a deep relationship with our bodies.
The practices that you want to bring in and the 3 key tools are breath, sound, and movement. Because breath is a really great way to resource and regulate the nervous system. It's also a great way to like move and connect to energy, and you can breathe into your pelvis and genitals so you can start to like connect back to your sexual energy with the breath. Sound is also like our natural way of soothing the vagus nerve being the central nerve, which I spoke about, that when we bring it online, brings us into a regulated safe space. And then non-linear movement, so allowing the body to sort of come alive with movement, roll with where your body wants to go. Like, don't be in resistance. I'm doing it now, and then just like notice, like, do you want to stretch, or do you want to roll your neck, and you can really then build into then like, oh, I want to kind of like stand up and dance and shake, and you can then move into more of an exaggerated practice if that feels true to you. But that can really, really help bring you back online.
I feel that now I could do that.
Yeah.
Whereas I think back then that almost felt totally out of reach.
And I feel like in those moments, you've got to meet what you can reach. And, one thing that comes to mind as an example is being in bed, becoming aware that you're in bed, the softness of the sheets, engaging the senses, wrapping yourself like a burrito in your duvet and breathing, and then grabbing your laptop, putting a Netflix show, like really meeting yourself. Like, what I feel when you can't reach that level of like mobilization is you almost need to meet the freeze. You almost need to go in it and stop overriding it by over functioning and getting on with life. That's the piece.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do that all day. Create a pocket of time where you're just going to go into the collapse.
Yeah.
And you're going to wrap yourself up and really be with your freeze so that it can complete something,
Right, I see.
Freeze likes warmth,
Interesting. Yeah, because I do think, if I think back to grief, I think back to feeling cold.
Yeah. And it's almost, when I think of grief, I think of like the colours get turned off.
Yeah.
And like that cartoony, like that wind whips around you, and it's like emptiness all around you, and like it's gone into black and white, and you're like,
so
it's
interesting.
like that echoey wind,
Because I cooked and cooked and cooked and cooked.
What did you cook?
I just cooked everything in Ottolengi's book. It's just like, you just cook loads of vegetables. But I just like, I cooked and cooked and cooked.
Yeah.
We're really kind of congratulated on being high functioning.
Yeah.
You really are. Like, you're doing something, you're achieving things, you're being successful, you're doing things. There are things on your to-do list, you need to get them ticked off. And I think it does feel really kind of, feels the antithesis of what we're being told that we should be doing. Like, meet your freeze.
Yeah.
And submit to it. And feel comfortable in there for a while and allow yourself. And I remember like my husband saying to me, like, just, you don't have to be cooking.
Just put the pans down, babes.
Like, and he was just a bit like, and it was fine because it felt quite meditative to me. And it felt like, well, I'm cooking, I'm nourishing myself, I'm nourishing my family.
Yeah.
It felt, and like I did like some gardening, so it was like, it was very, it wasn't like high functioning, like going to work kind of thing. But it was that kind of inability to just,
like collapse into it, just surrender.
And be immobilized.
Surrender.
Yeah.
And surrender is actually a good word. Now I've said it because, great sex and orgasms, particularly with women, require you to surrender. You can't be controlling the moment. You can't be controlling your body. You can't be like, have inhibitions or be caged or self-conscious. To fully orgasm, you have to get wild and primal and fully let go, and when we're kind of avoiding that freeze or that collapse or that emotion, we're doing the same thing that we do when we prevent, that guttural orgasmic experience.
So interesting.
It's very similar in a way, to really, really crack to grief is to crack to orgasm.
Who would have thought? You heard it here first.
Who would have thought?
I guess my goal is like to kind of feel that aliveness again.
Yeah, with yourself.
With myself. What would your recommendation be? And maybe there's an assignment that I could do and take away to do.
Well, I would say like roll it right back. There's a particular practice that I guide called the goddess breath, where I use breath, sound and movement for you to slowly move into your body at your pace, at your truth. And I'll send you a little guided one so you can practice.
Okay. So I'll do that at home. That'll be my assignment.
And add the whole, make that your self-pleasure session. I think we have it in our heads that self-pleasure is bringing ourselves to orgasm. What if we restructured that as self-pleasure is anything, any moment, any night, any practice that brings you a bit closer home to yourself?
Bit closer home to the body.
Bit closer home to the body.
There we go. I think we found the ending.
The golden nugget within.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much. There's just like so much there.
Thank you for having me. Loved it so much.
And now stick around. I'm heading into the assignment next. As you know, I'm bringing you guys along for the ride, and I'll mic myself up, and you're going to be able to hear snippets of what's going on in the assignment, as well as my reflections. The whole point of this project is to be as immersive as possible and to really show you what the sex coaching process is all about. So here we go. Okay, we're going into the Zoom. Big breath. Hi.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you? Well, thanks so much for doing this. This is very kind of you.
Okay, so I'll introduce the practice, right? So the goddess breath incorporates breath, sound, and movement. So those are the key tools that we use in psychosexual somatics, in Tantra. It's such an all-rounder. These 3 tools are just like these key practices that we use to support clients to work with their sexuality, like work with their sexual energy, whilst also regulating their nervous system and getting into their bodies.
Okay, so it's multifaceted.
Multifaceted. When we've kind of like chronically got this sort of nervous system trauma within us, and we want to move into tools and practices to move it out of the system, this is a really good one. And one thing I will say is I will guide you to meet your edges a bit with it.
Okay.
And so you push yourself a little bit further, just to stretch out of your comfort zone, but not into your panic zone.
Okay, cool.
Yeah? Any other questions?
No, but let's not put expectations on it. Let's just do it, and then I can ask you questions after.
What we can do is we can practice it, and then we can come back together for a debrief.
Okay. Hi.
Hello. You look like you're glowing.
Oh, really?
How was that for you?
It was good. It was a bit more challenging than I expected.
Yeah.
It was more challenging to get out of my head. And I was like really aware of the inner critic being in there quite a lot. Oh, you used to be able to do these things so much better back in the day, because I haven't done a somatic exercise for years.
Yeah.
These kind of practices used to feel really normal to me, whereas I was like, gosh, this feels really unusual now.
Yeah.
And then so there was a bit of kind of judgment there and a bit like, no, shut up, come on, just get back into your body. Be like, oh God, I can't get into my body. Oh God. Then actually when you asked me to look around the room, I was like, yeah, I am kind of not here. So it is a bit dissociative, I guess, as well. It was almost like a dance between being in my head and then being able to relax and get into my body. And I think it was just a dance like that throughout the whole practice.
Yeah. Well, the one thing with this practice is where I kind of guided you was more maybe energized version. Whereas you can move into breath, sound and movement in much slower and subtler ways. And particularly if you find that trying to maybe push it a bit more creates this association or like feeling of not being there, a really slowed down version is just as is powerful. We probably talked about this when we were working together, but the practice of titration, which is sort of like, the correct dose. So, it's knowing like where someone's body's at, not just in this chapter of their life, but in this moment. Sometimes we come out of work or we've had something, we're completely like somewhere else and we need smaller doses. And so it's never a case of, oh, one day you'll get to this bigger dose. The whole practice of working with the body is honouring where it is right now.
Interesting. So even people who practice this, say someone has a daily practice with this, can they even see fluctuations in how they can meet their body or how embodied they can feel?
Yeah, so I mean, I do this practice often, and sometimes, I'm really distracted and I just need to do a tiny bit and a tiny drop, and that's enough, and I need to kind of, work with the resistance and the reality, right? So, sitting with the body or doing a practice like that for a long period of time when you're disassociating is just it's not useful, It's better just to be like, maybe all I've got right now is a couple of breaths, maybe just a stretch, maybe just a little acknowledgement of my body, and that's enough today. So the check-in is always really the most important part.
And that's almost the practice, isn't it? Knowing what your body wants.
Yeah. And that, even that is not always easy, because sometimes our minds are so busy and our bodies are so strung out that our body's not sort of clearly speaking to us. But even then, sometimes it's like, maybe I just need to rest and let it go for now.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting, different way of thinking about your health, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a kind of body forward.
Yeah. Giving the body the mic, I like to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is a great practice, which I think I can start doing more of. And these are 3 free tools that are just so easily accessible. And it's so good to reconnect with these practices, which I just haven't for so long.
Yeah, it can even be just sometimes you're making a tea and you're thinking about something, you suddenly realise your shoulders are up by your ears, your tummy's clenched, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Just let it just soften, just micro acts of like letting your body soften. Because if we kind of like throughout the day like that, and then we get into the bedroom and we're supposed to be in sort of surrendered state, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
We're almost giving the body a new muscle memory of like, it's safe to soften.
Because you're kind of practicing that kind of more consistently. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Free tools.
So it doesn't have to be that big practice. You've experienced that though. It's great. Everything's information, It's like, actually that made me disassociate. So I need to find my dose of this practice.
And just bring it down a little bit. Great reminder. So thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Come Undone. If you're feeling inspired to explore your sexuality, whether after a big life event or simply because you feel disconnected, head over to my website. You'll find the details in the description, along with a workbook I've created to go hand in hand with this podcast. It's designed as a stepping stone to help you reconnect to your body and your sexual spark.